Imagine a young woman living roughly 34,000 years ago, somewhere in the cold plains of what is now Western Russia. Her community has just lost 2 children, and instead of a quiet, simple burial, the entire group spends what must have been hundreds of hours preparing something extraordinary. Thousands of hand-carved ivory beads sewn one by one onto clothing that will never be worn again, covering the children's bodies from head to toe. When archaeologists finally excavated this site, known as Sungir, and modern geneticists sequenced DNA from the remains buried there, they found something nobody expected. The adults buried alongside these children were not closely related to each other at all. This community had deliberately built itself out of unrelated family lines, brought together from different groups entirely. Somebody's family 34,000 years ago had already made a decision that still shapes billions of lives today, choosing a partner from outside their own group. So how did ancient humans actually get married? All research and sources on this are extensive, and the honest answer traces back far earlier than you'd expect. Through fossilized teeth, brain chemistry in a small rodent, ancient clay tablets, and a burial site that rewrote what we thought we knew about prehistoric relationships. Let's start with the oldest evidence, which goes back further than humans as a species even exist. Around 4.5 million years ago, an early human ancestor called Ardipithecus ramidus was already showing signs of something unusual for a primate. Paleoanthropologist Owen Lovejoy examined the fossilized teeth of this species and found something telling. The canine teeth of males and females were nearly identical in size. In most primates, including gorillas and chimpanzees today, males evolve large dagger-like canines specifically to fight other males for access to females. The near absence of that difference in Ardipithecus suggests something had already shifted in this lineage. Instead of competing violently for mates, males may have started doing something else entirely, reliably providing food to a single female and her offspring in exchange for that female's preference and loyalty. This idea, known as the provisioning hypothesis, suggests pair bonding in the human lineage may be millions of years older than marriage itself, older than language, older than fire. But evolutionary tendency doesn't explain why bonding with one person feels the way it does. For that part of the story, researchers turn to an unremarkable rodent studied for one very specific reason. Prairie voles are one of the only mammal species on Earth that form long-term, exclusive attachments resembling human pair bonding. Their close relatives, montane voles, look almost identical but are completely promiscuous, forming no lasting attachment to any mate. Researchers Sue Carter and Tom Insel discovered the difference wasn't really about behavior, it was about brain chemistry. Prairie voles carry significantly more receptors for 2 specific hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin, concentrated in the reward centers of their brains. When researchers experimentally blocked these hormones, the pair bond failed to form at all, even after mating. When they administered the hormones directly into voles that hadn't mated yet, the animals still formed a lasting preference for one specific partner. Humans run on a strikingly similar chemical system. Oxytocin surges during physical intimacy and childbirth, generating powerful feelings of trust. Vasopressin plays a particularly strong role in male bonding and partner guarding behavior. Neither hormone evolved with weddings or legal contracts in mind. They evolved, in the most literal sense, to make you feel like staying. By the time researchers can study hunter-gatherer societies directly, marriage in something closer to the modern sense, an arrangement recognized by the wider group rather than just the couple, was already remarkably widespread. A 2011 study using genetic family trees to reconstruct ancestral marriage practices found that arranged marriages likely stretch back at least 50,000 years to the earliest migrations of modern humans out of Africa. In roughly 85% of hunter-gatherer cultures studied, someone other than the couple, usually parents or close kin, played the decisive role in choosing who married whom. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. In small, mobile groups where every relationship affected the survival of the entire band, marriage functioned closer to a treaty than a romance. Marrying someone from a different group created a guaranteed ally elsewhere, a wider network for sharing resources during a bad season, and, based directly on the genetic evidence from Sungir, a way to avoid the serious costs of a small, isolated group breeding only with itself. The same 2011 research found consistent evidence of bride service or bride price across these ancestral practices, some form of exchange between families, gifts, labor, or resources moving from one side to the other as part of the arrangement. A marriage wasn't primarily a celebration of feelings. It was a carefully negotiated transfer of obligation between 2 family networks who now depended on each other. From here, the story moves from oral custom into something written down and permanent for the first time in human history. By around 2350 BCE in ancient Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets record what may be the earliest formal marriage contracts ever discovered, specifying property, obligations, and the rights each party held. In patriarchal societies developing complex inheritance systems, the primary legal function of these contracts was establishing with certainty whose children belonged to whom, so that property and leadership could pass down an unambiguous bloodline. The pattern spread quickly across the ancient world. Archaeological sites in Sumeria reveal elaborate dowries, livestock, musical instruments, valuable goods, all exchanged as part of formalizing a union between two families. Centuries later, sacred texts from India dating between 1500 and 500 BCE describe increasingly detailed ceremonies uniting a man and woman under religious as well as social authority. Cave paintings in Spain, dated to roughly 30,000 years ago, appear to depict figures participating in what some researchers interpret as proto-wedding rituals, suggesting the impulse towards ceremony around pairing may be far older than any written record. So what did ancient humans actually do to get married across this entire span of prehistory and early history? They avoided inbreeding by deliberately choosing partners from outside their immediate group, as the genetic evidence from Sungir demonstrates directly. They relied on a chemical bonding system, oxytocin and vasopressin, that researchers can trace back through comparative studies of pair-bonding mammals like prairie voles. They let parents and kin networks arrange the majority of unions, treating marriage as a practical alliance between families rather than a private romantic choice. They exchanged goods and labor as part of formal agreements long before anyone wrote those agreements down. And eventually, in Mesopotamia, they turned an ancient biological tendency into something entirely new, a written legal contract designed to protect property and bloodlines rather than feelings. Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. For the overwhelming majority of this 34,000-year story, marriage had almost nothing to do with the reason most people assume they're getting married today. If this entire timeline were compressed into a single 24-hour day, the idea that two people should marry primarily because they're in love with each other wouldn't appear until the final few minutes before midnight. The oxytocin flooding your brain. The next time you feel certain you've found the right person is running on chemistry inherited from a small ape that stopped needing giant fighting teeth nearly 4.5 million years ago. The wedding, the contract, the cultural expectation that love should be the entire reason for any of it is something almost shockingly recent, layered thinly on top of biology that was never originally built with romance in mind at all.